Okay, team. Class is in session. Don't make me flash the lights. Welcome all to the What is CrossFit seminar. Let's first acknowledge the beautiful irony of what CrossFit is, meaning you all do CrossFit a lot. They're like, hey, let's do a whole seminar on what this, yeah, I don't actually know what this thing is. Funny enough, like here we are, like, oh, I've been here for 5 years. Actually, this is 15 years. Right? Like, still helps to refresh. So we're going to talk about what is CrossFit. Ideal outcomes today is to just give you a little bit more understanding of the boring stuff about CrossFit that doesn't really excite anyone. The information I'm going to give you might be a little high level, but feel free for clarifications. If you want it explained a little better or differently, feel free to ask. But what it does, or what the hope is today, to be like, okay, I know what CrossFit is, or I get an idea of what it is, right? Because one of the things that's really big, as we'll go through today, is CrossFit is really big on objective, versus subjective. We're defining our terms, saying, hey, if we're going to talk about something, let's make sure we're talking about that thing, right? If we're talking about houses, let's talk about houses, not apartments or tents or anything like that, right? CrossFit is very subjective, meaning it's personal. It's this thing that's for me, and you're all free to do that. And everyone who does CrossFit is free to do that. But if we're talking about CrossFit in any type of way, in a more productive conversation, it's like, hey, let's make sure we're objectively talking about CrossFit, right? So there is some definitions and stuff that we'll get into. But it is. Each of you, if you were to at a party say, what is CrossFit? You would have your own definition. And so we're going to start with a video, and all you'll have to do is just kind of turn your head or turn your body. And some of you may have seen this video, some of you haven't. But when you talk about like what CrossFit is, it's a short video, it's 2 minutes. But this video exemplifies how you're able to make it your own and encouraged to make it your own.
CrossFit is a lifestyle in which you are prioritizing your health. It's the absolute best way to help you reach your best. Staying hard for whatever your goal is, whether it's compete or just do a damn pull-up. Everyone is loving, everyone is cheering on. They don't let you quit, even if you want to quit. There, this experience, which is emotional, doesn't look emotional. It's like people working out. What's emotional? It's raw. It's intense. It's incredible. Freaking awesome. CrossFit is a fitness program where reward doing well, the ability to express for fitness in everyday life in many different planes. There's many different activities that you possibly imagine. People walk in the door and say, hey, where's all the machines? What are the machines?
Right?
Evaluation tool, easy to use.
I don't know if anyone needs a home evaluation, but Mark Ferris is the guy to go to. So I think, as you were watching that video, maybe you get you fired up, run through a brick wall, ready to go head first. But all those people summing up what is CrossFit to them in some way, shape, or form. But again, a little bit individualized. So how do we kind of bring it down to something? Well, there is a definition of CrossFit that tells you everything and tells you nothing all at once. CrossFit is constantly varied, functional movement, performed at high intensity. Constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensity. It's the definition that tells you everything and tells you nothing all at once. Like, okay, right? You're at a party, you do CrossFit. Oh, what is CrossFit? It's constantly varied functional movement, high intensity. Right. Just gonna go. But as we unpack this a little, you'll see that the answers lies within all these things. So a couple things, the main highlights we're gonna look at is varied or variance, functional, and intensity. Those key pieces of each thing, but also kind of laying in like the blurry lines of things. So first, that variance piece, right? The idea was the routine of what you do will tell me exactly what you're bad at. Meaning when Greg Glassman set out to create CrossFit, he wanted to create a fitness for someone who is prepared for almost anything, right? You look at training is often segmented. You weight lift on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do long, slow cardio on Tuesdays and Thursdays, maybe do some stretching on Saturdays. Well, if you lift on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you do cardio, we can tell exactly where you're going to be bad at the other things, right? And if you combine those two things together, it's like you've never done either of them, right? What Greg imagined was a police officer, a firefighter, a special forces person who's sitting in a car ready to go, and 3, 2, 1, they get a call through the radio and it's game on, right? And being able to be prepared for anything, chase a bad guy into the forest and then have to drag them out of the forest a mile away, or a comrade or a teammate, any of those things, right? But if we look at it, the main idea here is our routine is the enemy. And then also segmented training equals segmented results. So that's often why we can lift, but then when we run and lift, it's like we've never done either, right? We can talk about technique on a heavy day. Let's really dial in our technique. Well, what happens when your brain stops working after a bunch of burpees, right? Those are all important things. So it's being able to be prepared for these things when we're stressed at our absolute most. And, it's like preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, meaning we never want to be in a position where we have to rely on those things. But in here is this kind of test ground that if anything ever did happen to us, we knew we could do these things, right? And so the variance, what should we vary? Well, we vary in CrossFit, we vary the movements, right? Every day is a little bit different. We vary the loading. Some days are heavy, some days are light, some days are kind of body weight, some days are a mix in between. We vary the intensity. Some days we feel like we got hit by a brick wall. Some days we go nice, slow. We'll get into that a little bit more into the practice. And then we vary it all together. We don't squat 2 days in a row until one time we squat 3 days in a row. It's all part of the program of being constantly varied. But we want to be prepared in CrossFit for the unknown and unknowable. Be ready for anything. So with the Open coming up, everyone's all worried about what's going to come down the pipe on the first workout. CrossFit's all about being prepared for anything that comes down. And you just handle the task when it comes up then, right? We can't know what's coming and it's unknowable. But the only way to be prepared for those things is to train that variance. What should we vary? The days we work out. If we only do Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, that's fine if that works for your routine. But what about doing a Monday, Thursday, or a Monday, Saturday, or a Monday, Tuesday, or a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, right? We want to vary those days in a row. I don't know if my body can handle 2 days in a row. Well, we don't know until we try. Because not only that, if you do like a Monday, a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, you are also getting the variance of the stuff in between. Maybe you're going high intensity, low intensity, heavy day. And that's so for those who have made that jump from 2 to 3 times a week to unlimited, start to notice that. It's like, oh, actually, wow, this isn't, the stuff kind of complements itself a little bit more. Time of day. If I only ever work out at 6 a.m., what happens when I need to work out at 6 p.m.? Right? Or at noon, or at 3 p.m., or when I don't have energy, or when I do have energy. It's kind of training you to make those kind of decisions a little differently to say, oh, I just don't have the energy. That's another part of it. If we only ever kind of hit this stuff when we're 100%, well, we kind of leave some gaps in the training to say, oh, I just don't feel like it today. Right? And that's part of where the committed club comes in. Hopefully, a few of you have come in a few times when you didn't want to, because of that dang sticker. The sticker's great. Everyone says the same thing. It's not about the sticker, but it is. It's fine. It's still about the sticker. But the sticker is a representation of showing up when you didn't want to, checking the box again. But again, understanding that giving yourself a little grace to say, like, part of variance is showing up when you're ready to run through a brick wall and you just got to check that box. Right? Giving yourself some grace to say, I'm just checking the box today. I'm just moving. Yeah, the goal's on the board, but the goal is to get here, move, and stay in motion from there, right? Maybe we got to vary the temperature we work out in, right? Sometimes under the fan, sometimes not. Outside in the cold, in the heat, in the humidity, all those things. Again, what happens if you perform great in one aspect, but not in another, right? The equipment we use. Maybe I always use lifters to squat. Okay, try in your bare feet. Try in socks. Try in running shoes. Try using knee sleeves. You get what I mean, right? As if we're always trying to fit our fitness, and we'll talk more about fitness a little later, into this perfectly measured box, well, then we're actually kind of narrowing what that tool that we're working on it can do for us. So variance, we're always constantly varying time, the limit, or excuse me, the intensity, the weights, the loading, all that stuff. Questions on variance? Good. So, variance is one of those things. It's like, okay, I get it, right? But then now we're moving into this kind of jumping ahead to intensity. And so what is this intensity piece? Well, that's the part that scares everyone away. I don't know how you do CrossFit. It's so intense. I could never handle it, right? And yeah, one of my favorite things is talking to people who are like, CrossFit's so intense. I do these HIIT classes at the Y and I love them, but CrossFit's too intense for me, right? Well, what does HIIT stand for? It's HIIT, high intensity interval training. It's in the word. I love them, but CrossFit's too intense for me, right? But we kind of have to understand intensity, right? And that's where we first really start to get into the idea of subjective versus objective. And there's some things that don't really do anyone a lot of favors. And one is these watches that tell you what your heart rate is, right? Heart rate often gets talked about with intensity. Heart rate is a correlate of intensity, but not actually intensity. We'll talk more about that, right? The biggest lesson for that is we could be like, wow, look at my workout. My heart rate really spiked. Oh my God, that must have been a great workout. Anyone ever been pulled over by the cops? Or had to cross the border? Or go through security at the border at the airport? Did you get a great workout then? Just nervous, right? What your heart rate tells me is maybe you held your breath for too long. So I'm constantly saying, breathe, breathe. Another thing that intensity is not is the commotion of it all. Someone looks in this room, they see the weights, they hear the loud music, everyone's dying. Holy shit, that's intense. Like, it's intense for you. For us, it's like, this is just another day in the office. right? What's not intense? No matter how much Mike B yells at you, that maybe or may not be intensity, right? So the cool thing about this is we can directly measure intensity so that each individual person can be, to make sure we're there. And here's this for you. Intensity is directly equal to power. How much power are you generating? Power, for any physics or mathematics measures, can be measured by force times distance over time. So that is intensity. Intensity is directly equal to power. The cool thing about that, and it never happens in a workout, but how far did you move it? Or excuse me, how much did it weigh? How far did you move it? And how fast did you move it? We calculate that. We can calculate how much power you output or your relative power output, then your intensity, right? And so that's where we always talk about varying the reps or the loading, right? Hitting the goal. You can go ham and go after it, but then if you, right? Every time we stop moving, that intensity drops because your power output in that moment drops, right? If we keep moving at a more steady state, your relative power output across that entire time stays the same, right? And then that's higher up than the peaks and valleys from there. But then we have to kind of challenge those things, right? Knowing that if we're only ever staying within that aspect of it, then are we pushing the limits? But the thing is, with all of us in here, when we have it this way, it can be measured, it can be written down. That's why your scores are so important. Not about competing with each other or anything, but understanding, okay, if you really wanted to, wow, my power output has increased over time. Therefore, my body is capable of generating power, right? And it's an interesting thing. If you were to poll someone at the mall, hey, are you interested in how much power you output? Like, no. If your body could output more power, do you think that would be interesting? Oh, yeah, I don't know what you mean, but yeah, you can see why that could be, right? It could be measured, it can be managed, and it can be improved. And the thing about intensity is this is the wordy part, it is the independent variable most commonly associated with an increased rate of return of favorable adaptation to exercise. Okay, everyone back to me now. Ready? What does that mean? Intensity equals results. That is where your results lie, in your intensity, not your volume. Not how much work you do, but how you do your work, right? How long does it take you to make a bowl? It varies, okay? Sure. Depends on the intensity, right? Right? If Xavier makes one bowl a day, he's going to have to sell them for a lot higher price than what he could. It might be. I mean, I don't know. I'm recording it. We'll just have to say we screwed up. Yeah. If he gets 10 bowls done in 10 minutes, I'm guessing the quality would be different, right? And then therefore the cost is less, right? So we're always trying to find that, he would be trying to find that sweet spot. I can't spend all day on a bowl. I also can't just rough these things out. There's got to be somewhere in the middle, right? Based on the size, the material, all those things. But anyone doing some work, right? So like I said, is power, force times distance over time. Force times distance is a mathematical equation of work. So what we're doing in a exercise or in a workout is measuring how much work you're doing. Okay. So what I mean by that, and why I want to go back to that idea of work, it doesn't matter what you do, is for work, you can either stretch that workout for a full 8-hour day, or do all the work of an 8-hour day as fast as you can and still get paid for 8 hours. Which one are you going to do? It's obvious, right? That is that's like the 21-15-9 or a task priority workout. When we're like, hey, like today, 50, 50, 50, and 50. That is your task. Get that task done as fast as you can. Right? Why stretch it out for longer? Or you could say, hey, I'm going to let you work for 8 hours. You're going to do as much of this task as you can, and I'm going to pay you $100 per completed item. Well, you're going to get after it. You're going to make me pay. Right? That's an AMRAP. Right? So it kind of breaks away that traditional thinking of 1 hour at the gym is what I need. Right? If 1 hour is better than half an hour, then 2 hours is twice as good as an hour. But you can see what starts to happen. If we're going to work out for 2 hours, what's going to happen to this power out? Drop off, right? So that's why we do intervals. That's why we do all those things. But intensity is the independent variable most commonly associated with an increased rate of return of favorable adaptation to exercise. Just means you're going to get whatever you want. Intensity is the answer. I could give each one of you a little sheet of paper. Write down your goal. Doesn't matter what the goal is. It could be in here. It could be out there. It could be anything. Put it in your pocket, right? Wait for 6 months. Do CrossFit 3, 4, 5 days a week. Focus on intensity, and I can guarantee almost with exact precision that you will have achieved that goal. As long as you objectively, not subjectively, hit it with the intensity that you're able to do relatively based on what your mind and your body can tolerate that day, you'll get there. Looked at a different way. If me, Emily, and Kathleen are going to Tim Hortons, I decide to sprint there as fast as I can. Emily decides to jog, and Kathleen decides to walk. Right? Emily jogs there, she gets there, and I'm passed out with some puke beside me. Well, maybe that's a little too intense because we still have to take the coffee back here. She's already ordered and has the coffee while Kathleen strolls up to help her back. Right? Maybe she could have got there a little faster. So next time, maybe I'll run. Was it, okay?
And they all run the same calorie, correct? It's the same distance.
So again, and we'll talk more about this when we get into fitness. Yeah, so Kim's question was kind of like, okay, the calorie output is the same. Calorie would be, again, more in the correlate versus the causational. We'll get into that when we talk about fitness and why we do all these things, right? But just look at what we're able to do. Let's look at it from an ability standpoint. Kathleen had the ability to go a little bit faster. Emily, maybe, we don't know. The only way we know is till we try. And I could have slowed down a little bit. Could have slowed down entirely, right? So we try to find those things and find that relative intensity. So if intensity is what gets me results, why isn't everyone in the world working out with intensity? No wrong answers. Anyone? Guess? Because it sucks. It does. It is. That's the difference. But interesting part about CrossFit is that's why it collects a bunch of different people, 10 completely different people in this room, but all seem to be stitched together with some sort of thread where it's like, I hate getting challenged, but I fucking love getting challenged. Right? I hate it and I don't want to do it, and you have to drag me kicking and screaming, but man, I'm ready to do it again tomorrow. Right? And that's all. And that's just the difference, but it's why some people play the cello and some people play the tambourine. It's just the difference, and that's just where, but we end up collecting folks who want to be challenged, who want to take on more, who said, I'm going to shovel this damn driveway if it takes me all day. But you're able to do it. And that's the key, right? And intensity can be measured through power and it can be improved. And it's really about just dosing yourself appropriately and effectively. And when you maybe put too much hot sauce on your workout. It's not a bad thing. It's not, oh, I must be terrible. It's maybe I put too much hot sauce on today. Put on less next time. And then be like, okay, that was good. I didn't burn as much. Put on more next time and go back and forth. Yes, Giselle. Great question. Yeah. So again, a workout today, high reps, 50 per thing, 200 reps total. It's not about necessarily, great question. It's not necessarily about what's going to be better unless you have the data to go against it, right? So what I mean by that is, so force times distance over time. Well, how long did the workout take you? Let's just say option one, it took me 14 minutes. And how much weight did you use? Right? I used 35 pounds. Oops, 35 pounds. So maybe next time I try 65 pounds and it took me 32 minutes, right? All you can do is learn next time. Okay, maybe I'm going to try to go somewhere in the middle next time. Right? So it's not about better, it's just about taking your, and that's why your notes is so important. And when we log the RX versus scaled and then the notes from there. Does that, I know I didn't answer your question, but you get what I mean? It's not about what's better that day, right? It's just, here's what I did today, knowing that I could measure how my intensity was or what my power output was. But then what we also have to factor in to complicate the answer as well is, how did you sleep last night? How much food did you have? Did you drink water? How much have you been training overall? Why can I work out? Is it day 6 or is it day 1? Right? So not a great answer, I know, but see where it gets you, right? Any other questions on intensity? Was there a yeah? Oh, okay. Yeah. Right? It's true. How did I feel, right? But then all of a sudden, is Emily could do that workout again in 6 months, exact same weight, exact same time. But then in her notes, she's like, I felt great after. That's an improvement, right? So it's important to know that we can define these things and put them into the box, but it is still individualized to that day, right? So the last piece would then be functional. The biggest probably buzzword of them all right now in the fitness and wellness. Functional this, functional that, back to function, return to function. This is function, my life function, daily function, right? What is function? Well, it's kind of one of those things that if you were to say, hey, let's all go catch butterflies. Okay, let's go catch butterflies. Here's your net. Kathy and Kathleen get a net. Kim and Trevor, Lori and Blake, everyone gets a net. Well, these two come back with beetles. These two come back with frogs, right? These two were the only ones that came back with butterflies, right? Well, it's because maybe we didn't talk about what a butterfly is and what it should be, and that's what we want, right? So the key about it is functional movements are movements that are categorically unique in their ability to express power. So functional movements are movements that are categorically unique in their ability to express power. So you don't have to understand what that means. You just have to understand that we can determine what is functional for everyone that's different than everyone's life, right? I never put a weight over my head and do this. So it's not functional for me. Yeah, but maybe you don't do anything. So therefore, nothing's functional, right? Representative by being able to move a large load, a long distance, and quickly. A functional movement moves a large load, a long distance, and quickly. Olympic lifting, the snatch, 500 pounds from the ground all the way overhead, back up and drop in a matter of 2 seconds. Large load, a long distance, and quickly. Right? The #1 programmed workout on CrossFit.com, where this all started, is a 5K run. Right? And you think, okay, well, that's running, it's cardio. Well, but running is a large load. I mean, I'm doing the zone, I'm working on it, but large load, long distance, 5,000 meters, and for me, quickly is relative, but you know what I mean, right? So that's why running is different than cardio. Running is a functional movement because we're taking our body, moving at a distance, and hopefully fairly quickly, right? That becomes something that can be measured. But then there's also a few things about functional movement, some characteristics where it's like, okay, this smells like a functional movement, but maybe it isn't. I don't know, maybe it is. So one of those things is that it's built into your DNA. A functional movement is built into your DNA. Looked at a different way, why do toddlers have the best squats in the world? Why? And then why all of a sudden, as we get older, never squat below parallel, it's bad for your knees, they should track in line with your toes, it should be this, 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 and this. You don't stop. How old's your boy? 3.5. What's his name? Finnegan? She doesn't say, hey, Finn, you shouldn't be below parallel. You need to have your knees in line with your toes and your weight, right? Squatting is a functional movement. It's because they pop down like so. I'm networking with a gym owner in Taiwan studying for his level 4, and we watched a video of his class. 10 out of 10 people in the squat, just beautiful, or in the class, beautiful squats. 10 out of 10. Because in Asia, a squat is a squat. It's not sitting, right? So functional movements are built into our DNA. They involve wrong color. They involve universal recruitment. They use universal recruitment patterns. Fancy way of saying the muscles move the same way across the board, right? Why do we row in CrossFit? Is because the motion of rowing, aside from the pull, is a deadlift. That's why we row and deadlift together. The same movement pattern, right? But they use the same muscles. Your bum, your hamstrings, right? Not necessarily categorically in those things, but with that. They're multi-joint. And that's another way of saying compound. So we do fitness that are compound movements, not isolation movements. Isolation movements live in biceps, right? That's why, especially the newer folks, why we don't do arm day, or we talk about today's a leg day, or we're doing shoulders, right? It's because when do you use your delts when you're gardening? Right? You don't, right? Do you use your teres minors when you're pushing a car out of the ditch? I mean, a little bit, yeah, but careful, right? So isolation movements are really great for in a aesthetics. I'm trying to train my body for some sort of competition, as well as for sport specific training or even a rehabilitative or physio aspect. But an isolation movement doesn't move a large load a long distance and quickly. We can't lateral raise a large load a long distance and quickly, right? They're safe, ironically enough. Done properly with great technique, they are safe, right? If you were to 1 rep max a lateral raise, that puts a lot of strain on an individual joint. But again, being multi-joint, we're spreading that load over multiple joints. Again, done effectively to the points of performance that the coaches are always hammering you on. That's how you can be efficient, but as well, it's how you can be very safe. And then finally, they are a wave of contraction from core to extremity. interesting thing about the human body, whether someone believes in creationism, meaning some higher power put us here, or we evolved from fish out of the ocean, or however evolution works, the body is still the body is still the body. And what I mean by that is this joint is the biggest, this joint is the second biggest, this joint is the third biggest. Same thing. Biggest, biggest, biggest. Therefore, the bigger joints can and should move the most amount of weight and everything out from there, right? So today's sumo deadlift high pulls is why we focus on opening the hips first before pulling. Because the moment I start pulling, the moment my little joints start pulling before my bigger joints, well, I have an inefficient violation of functional movements, core to extremity, right? If I'm going to pick something up onto a bed of a truck, if I have a bucket, I'm not going to lift it up and then try to get it up on the truck. I'm going to keep my arm straight. I'm going to get that bucket moving and then boom, lift it up on the truck. I'm going to use my arms to guide that thing onto the bed of the truck after my hips have got it moving. The hips do the most amount of work at the bottom. Then with this object has a little bit of momentum, my smaller muscles get it finished the rest of the way, right? Pitching a baseball, hips, big step, open the hip, and then boom, the hand moves the fastest, right? Those become functional movements, right? Or those are functional movements. So the key is they can be defined, right? We're moving a large load a long distance and quickly. We are doing it with some relative intensity, aka your power. That's going to get me my results, and I'm going to vary it. I'm not going to hit myself with intensity every single day because that's not variance, right? I'm not going to work out for 20 minutes a day. That same 20 minutes, because that's not variance. So on and so forth. So CrossFit is constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. Questions on that? Does it make sense but not make sense all at once? Right? Because then the idea is someone's like, yeah, I did CrossFit for a bit. You know, it was okay. I don't know, I did it right. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Are we talking about CrossFit or are we talking about your CrossFit? Right? You can do your CrossFit in the garage, but CrossFit, you know, that happens in here, and we try to stay within that range. And that's why folks are like, oh, we should do a yoga class, but we're a CrossFit gym. Can we work on our endurance? Sure, through CrossFit, right? But why we do it is we're really trying to improve our fitness. So we can ask the same question. What is fitness, right? Becomes a new aspect. So if we're training for the unknown and unknowable, then we have to have a fitness that is broad, general, and inclusive. Fitness that is broad, general, and inclusive. And in CrossFit, we have a belief that fitness has the adaptive capacity to lend itself generally well to almost all physical ailments. So fitness has the adaptive capacity, meaning it can change your body generally enough to improve some aspect of your life. Generally, right? Rather than some specific stuff. But fitness is one of those kind of words that is thrown around everywhere. What is fitness? You know, it's like health. Okay, well, what is health? Oh, well, health is inclusivity and vitality and well-being and energy and this and that. Oh, well, guess what? Now we're really start getting into subjective when we talk about health, right? One of the biggest, try to not get on the soapbox, but your health is your health. We can say yes or no if your health. If it's no, that's hard to hear. So me saying, yeah, no, but based on this, you can be healthy. Based on your vitality, you're healthy. Based on, tests, we can say otherwise. So what we got to try to do is come up with something that we can do to, again, how can we measure health and fitness to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So in doing so, Greg Glassman, the guy who created CrossFit, kind of started working through it, and he kind of figured out these 4 individual aspects that don't really give you the answers, but when you put them together, they start to give you the answer. So for the first model it's called, there's 10 general physical skills. So the medicine balls are a brand, most of them are from this brand called Dynamax, completely separate of CrossFit. CrossFit just utilized those medicine balls. But the gentlemen, Bruce Evans and Jim Colley, they're the ones who started Dynamax. I don't know if it was over beers or over working, came up with a list of 10 general physical skills. Okay? So they are balance, accuracy, agility, coordination, power, speed, ability, strength, stamina, and finally, cardiovascular endurance. So this becomes a list of skills or a list of physical attributes: balance, accuracy, agility, coordination, power, speed, flexibility, strength, stamina, cardiovascular endurance. When we look at these, if we were going to say the 4 nations face off that just happened, the difference between winning or losing a game could rely on any one of these things. Right? Someone doesn't have the balance, they can't stay on their skates. They don't have the accuracy, I'm not making passes. I don't have the agility, I can't move out of the way or move fast, right? You get the idea. Any one of these skills can be the difference between losing a game, losing a race, losing a mission, losing our lives, any aspect from there, right? And the interesting thing about this is when people inquire about CrossFit, nobody says, I want to improve my coordination and balance. Not one emails in, hey, just want to know what your rates are. My balance and coordination is off. Want to improve on it, right? But get introduced to any type of movement that we do here. Hey, who wants to improve their coordination? Yeah, right? And the idea is, as we saw in that video, as you improve your coordination, well, maybe you can go play pickleball or go rock climbing or go wake surfing or windsurfing or do a triathlon, right? So he who is balanced, if we're going broad, general, and inclusive, he who is most balanced across, he or she is balanced most across all of these 10 general skills would be fittest. Anyone who has lots of flexibility, but no power, right? Or cardiovascular endurance, marathon runners, versus strength, weightlifters, right? Power lifters. So when we talk about who's the fittest in the world, well, okay, I guess we have to define what fitness is. The last two, great question. Yeah, so cardiovascular endurance would be your breathing, right? So as in running, right? That would be it. Stamina is your ability to do strength is your ability to do 1 pull-up. Your stamina is ability to do 10 pull-ups for 5 sets every single time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Stamina is a little more muscular based. Cardiovascular would be basically your heart rate, your blood pumping, all those things. Right? So 10 general physical skills. And then basically when we have these aspects, number two, it's called the hopper. So basically if I had, I'm going to try to draw this with some sort of, right, boom, 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 boom. So this is a barrel with a handle on it. There can be a little, right? So it's not a pig, it's a barrel. Crank the barrel, right? So that's a trigger. It's a trigger, yeah, right? So any physical task, anything, throw it out. Anything. Okay, not at once. What? Getting out of the pool, put it in there. Maybe, okay, let's say we're going to swim, right? Swim 5 laps. Shoveling snow, put it in there. Playing hockey, a hockey game, put it in there, right? 1 rep max deadlift, put it in there. 5K run, put it in there, right? Snowboarding, put snow blowing, sure, put it in there. Put any physical task in there and then pull them out. And we have to measure these things, right? So all these aspects, okay, getting in and out of the pool 20 times for time, right? That, okay, good. Next event is a hockey game, great. Put that in there, right? Being prepared for anything, the unknown and unknowable, whoever is best across these random tasks, averagely best across all random tasks, is going to be the fittest, determine the fittest, right? We could take those kind of classic Olympic sports. Okay, 100-meter run, Olympic weightlifting, javelin, rings and gymnastics, and pardon? Well, the decathlon would be what that is, right? Who performs averagely best across all those pieces from there. So the interesting part about the hopper model, or the hopper itself though, right, is we have all these things. Well, guess what? Whatever you don't want to see come out of that barrel that you're going to have to do is the thing you need to do the most, right? So it is by training your deficiencies or the things you're not good at or the weaknesses is where you can see the most improvement. Getting good at the things you're already good at is not how you get better. Getting good at the things you're not good at is how you improve everything. Knowing, again, we're using things like universal recruitment patterns, things like that. What does that represent itself as in the gym? Cherry picking. Right? Cherry picking comes in a bunch of different ways. It's I don't like burpees. It's I don't like heavy days. I don't like long workouts. I don't think I'm going to get a good workout in 5 minutes. Any one of those pieces, right? But it's by training the things that you don't want to see come up in the open that improves us overall, right? Because probably along the way, we're going to have some sort of deficiency of how our bodies create energy from there, right? So this is going to be a graph. Over here we have how much power are you generating? So the higher up on the graph you are, the more power you're generating. Down at the bottom, you have time. The farther you go this way, the longer the time effort is, okay? Your body, the bioenergetics of your body creates ATP. Any biomechanics in here? Anyone? ATP? What does it stand for? Way! Adenosine triphosphate. It's your body's energy currency. That's not going to be on the test. Point is, your body can create energies in 3 main pathways. One is this short, fast, high explosive, short duration. High power, very short. That's Olympic lifting. That's the snatch. 500 pounds up overhead, drop down. That's all I got. One is a more kind of medium base power output. And then the last one is this long, slow kind of. So in your body, aerobic and aerobic. This stuff's less important in the the specifics. It's just more understanding the basics of it. Long, slow 10K run, that's an aerobic exercise, right? So that your body's able to create kind of an infinite number of amount of energy to keep you going relative to your muscle stamina, right? Your legs will give out before your lungs type deal, right? These two pathways here are anaerobic. And this is where we generally live. We spend less time over here, but more time in here. But the idea is to be able to be proficient in all of them, right? If you're only an endurance runner, well, again, you're going to be less balanced in these higher power outputs. If you only like working out for 5 minutes, well, guess what happens when you have to work out for 40 minutes, right? So if we're creating a fitness that's broad, general, and inclusive, well, I want to make sure that I'm kind of able to do all of these things. I can do any task that's thrown at me. I can go skiing at Horseshoe Valley, right? Short distance down the run, or I can go cross-country skiing at Hardwood or around a lake, right? Being able to do both. And so it's very boring right now. Its application is your friend calls you up and says, hey, let's go do blank. And you say, hell yeah. Right? And because you can, right? But any worry along the way is like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know if my glycolytic pathway can handle it. Right? So that stuff's less important than just understanding he or she who can handle all aspects is truly going to be fit. Right? And the last piece was kind of understanding how these things all start to come together, realizing, okay, fit, well, whatnot. What if they were all on the same continuum, right? So rather than separating these things, fitness. What if we put them on the same line or same continuum? Sickness, wellness, and fitness, right? Said a different way, you could take any health metric, blood pressure. There is a value of blood pressure that would be considered sick. Go to the doctor, better yet, go to the emerge, right? Or someone's blood pressure is really good. It's like, wow, you're a freak. What's going on here, right? You take any athlete, again, assuming they are taking care of themselves in all aspects, but their blood pressure is probably pretty good. And then you take someone who is on blood pressure medicines, they're going to be here. So again, back to that, fitness has the general capacity to lend itself generally well to all physical ailments. Well, if someone, let's just say, got in shape, guess what happens to their blood pressure as they start going this way? It starts improving. Same could be said against any metric, any health metric. You will have values that are representative of sick, values are representative that are well, and then fit. And the fit folks, those are almost considered like super wellness. They're the outliers. They're out here, right? We want to live in this general aspect from here. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Something like anxious, right? I'm anxious because I don't know if I'll be able to do it. Makes me uncomfortable, right? Or versus, I know I can take on anything. I don't know what's going to present me, but I know I can take it on, right? So fitness then becomes our hedge against sickness. We don't pursue fitness. We don't pursue a muscle up. We don't pursue pull-ups. We don't pursue a 500-pound deadlift for those things. We pursue those things because what they do for this. Fitness becomes your hedge against sickness. If this instead was a line instead of a curve, right? Sickness, wellness, and then fitness just went on to infinity. The farther you are this way, the further you have to travel to get back to here, right? And it takes a lot longer to go from here to here. You very rarely, if at all, unless you're struck by a car, hit by someone, shot by a gun, jump or skip the line from fit to sick, right? So for me personally, I'm not generally, when Rox and I go to Mexico, I'm not in the gym with her every day. I get my 10,000 steps. Thankfully, my watch counts swimming in the pool as steps. If it says it on here, it must be true. I get my 10,000 steps, but I convince myself, I guess what I mean is I'm not passionate about working out. I'm passionate about this helps against this. So every day we don't want to do it. It's like, I owe myself to this, right? That's more of a mindset thing. And it's like, oh, you shouldn't say you have to work out. You get to work out. You get to, maybe you do have to, right? Just for the long run, right? This long term, right? Because then again, now we start talking as like our fitness is our health. So your fitness is to health. What weather is to climate. Your fitness is to health, what your weather is to climate. Who you are today and today's workout is not necessarily who you are in your overall fitness. Right? Again, one test in the open is not going to indicate overall how you are. Right? Weather and climate, just because it snowed, we've got a lot of snow this year, but it's been the most amount of snow in, I don't know when was the record, if anyone saw. We're almost at record levels. 1889. 1889. So it's like, oh my God, it always snows in Orillia. It snows nonstop. Yeah, we're approaching on a 150-year-old record, right? So your consistency in fitness is towards your health, right? And so basically what we now have is these 4 models, right? These general skills applied to random tests that are going to test me in some way, shape, or form of short, medium, and long to help me overall. Fitness is increased work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And modal domains. Okay. An increased work capacity across broad time and modal domains. Your ability to do more. Capacity, how big is your bucket? We're going to make that bucket be able to handle more across broad times, right? Short, medium, and long, and modal domains, a balance of skills and drills. We want you to be able to run, weightlift, snowboard, rock climb, play football, play pickleball, go play hockey, do a triathlon, and to improve over time, right? Because then what we have is an increased work capacity across broad time and modal domains, right? So if we think about these energy pathways, right? Don't worry about what they are, but worry about like that we can track them, right? So kind of shorter duration, high power, medium duration, medium power, long duration, longer power, right? So we can take that in a different direction in terms of workouts. It could be open workouts, it could be anything. 1 rep max deadlift lasts 3 seconds, right? So we're here, right? Maybe it's there. As I get stronger, I'm outputting more power. Right? Then we take a medium task. Grace, we did Grace this week, and Fran, maybe in the 2 to 4 minute range. How much power am I generating? Boom, boom, right? And then we start looking at some longer. What are my 5K run times? Boom. You start getting all these data points. These are your workouts, right? Over various, well, now we find the average across the board and we get some sort of curve, right? Some sort of curve, because this is how much power we're generating in a different way. Your area under the curve is your fitness. So we want to increase that curve over time. We did kind of a third axis coming down, and this is now corner of a room, right? We have X, Y, Z, and then it's like a blanket. Well, then this is our years, right? So we can increase your work capacity across broad time and modal domains and years. Increase your work capacity over years. Well, that's what equals health. Right? So basically, fitness is the key to not sucking at life. To be able to enjoy life, right? And take anything that it throws at you, to do more, to do those things. You don't always have to do CrossFit, but when you understand what fitness is, it's like, I got to do something, right? So it doesn't always have to be CrossFit. CrossFit now can be what we saw in the video or what you want it to be, but wherever anyone ever goes, I always tell people, you can leave, still squat below parallel, still do burpees, still do deadlifts, right? If we can teach you how to do those things, boom, check the box. That's great. We wish you well in life, but it's like, am I moving my goalposts? Becomes the question, right? When we're battling this thing in life and all that, I gotta make sure I'm not moving my goalposts, staying true to what's important to me, right? Your open is kind of that yearly plan for those things, and realizing this is what gives you the accomplishments that happen in the muscle ups and the snatches and whatnot. Those are just validations that you're doing the right things. You're moving in the right direction, right? We don't want to chase those. Those can be motivators, but those don't always have to be the goal, right? Because you can do a muscle up. What happens is your life any better? Yeah, not necessarily. It's what happens outside the gym, that ideally where your life becomes better. But the key is what this stuff does for you. Can we share your bone density story? I mean, putting you on the spot, right? So, well, do you want me to, can I tell it? Yeah, more or less. So basically, more or less, Lorraine had her bone density scan a couple of years ago now, right? Right? Sitting down with the health professionals with glasses on and whatnot. Right? My goodness, Lorraine, these numbers are cause for concern. And she's like, well, just so you know, I've been doing CrossFit. Right? Well, what's CrossFit? Well, it's this and that. And so, because we had this conversation, her and I, that exact week, she PR'd her deadlift at 185 pounds, right? 185 pounds. And she was jumping in a workout clear over a 16-inch box. Clear over, right? So it's like, oh, your bone density scans are cause for concern. Well, I've been doing CrossFit. Well, what is it? Well, I do these deadlifts. I deadlifted 185 pounds. I jumped over a 16-inch box. Oh, no. No, you must stop that. You got to stop that. Don't do that. Right? 10 pounds max. 10 pounds max. Right? But the muscles of a girl in her fucking 20s, pardon my French, sorry. I get a little explicitly passionate about it. Did you get your follow-up yet? Okay. Were they on the Delta flight? Oh, okay. Yeah.
But then, when I performance see if it's the same or better, then it's.
Right. Well, you increased your fitness, right? You did all this stuff, right? We did this stuff. So some of these things, right? So Greg Glassman has this idea of like a speeding train, right? A speeding train out of control. Brakes aren't working. Speedometers to here. Well, okay. Well, we could stop the train by changing the speedometer. Let's hit it with a hammer, move the needle down to 0. Bam. Everything's fine, right? No, the train's still out of control, right? So we look at our ability to do things as like, that's the train being out of control, right? Not the speedometer. And so back to calories, right? And whatnot, right? Calories and calories burned are all good. It's just, am I moving more than not? And things like that. But really that's what we're after, because there's no preventative value in medicine. Doesn't prevent things as much as this would, as opposed to basically lifeguards versus swim coaches, right? When you need a lifeguard, you need to be pulled out of the water. And then once you come out of the water, the lifeguard doesn't say, okay, go swimming again. They say, this is the 3rd time this week I pulled you out of the water. I need you to learn how to swim. You need a swim coach, right? And that's what fitness is. Medicine is lifeguards, fitness and moving our body and our health is a swim coach, right? And that's why we do this stuff. And that's what CrossFit is. There you go. Questions on that? And that's it. That's all. Questions, discussions, thoughts? Yes, Emily.
What aspect?
Great question. So accuracy question is, I'm paraphrasing, how is accuracy representative in CrossFit? Easiest way to tell you would be a wall ball, right? So a wall ball, I got to hit the target 9 foot and 10 foot. Guess what we had a couple months ago? Gentlemen had to throw to an 11-foot target. Ladies had to throw to a 10-foot target. Your ability to hit that target is the accuracy. In the open, if you miss the target, it's a no rep. Right? Nope. Hit the target for the rep to count. That'd be a version of accuracy. Does that answer the question for you? Other questions? Thoughts? Profound revelations. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and that's like, right. So again, CrossFit, constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. CrossFit done well improves your health, or not your health, your fitness, right? And fitness measured as an increased work capacity across broad time and modal domains. So it's when people say CrossFit movements. Oh, I do CrossFit movements at home. There are no CrossFit movements. CrossFit is a program that uses functional movements, right? I do CrossFit style workouts. Well, again, what's a style of a CrossFit workout? Right? It's a real thing. It's constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensity. Yeah.
You mentioned someone's name is the founder of CrossFit. Is that person like a police officer or something?
Greg Glassman. No, he wasn't. He was a gymnast. And then I don't know what he did kind of he's just always been a personal trainer and a trainer. He grew up in a scientific household. His father was one of the lead engineers on the weapons system of the F-14 fighter jet. Quite literally a rocket scientist. And in a scientific household, in a mathematical household, everything he ever did was, okay, we have to define our terms. We're going to argue over when bedtime is. It's at 8:30. When the little hand's at the 8, and right. And so that's was always his mind. And he was also obsessed with fitness. And then just realizing there's a lot of gray area in these things. And we're not doing anyone a favor by kind of trying to make it big and gray. In fact, by bringing it down into the box, we can help more people that way.
On that note, Matt, so there's some repeating schemes in CrossFit, like 21-15-9, for example.
Mhm.
Is there a science behind that, or like, just wondering where the numbers come from, the ones that tend to repeat?
Yeah, so Kim's talking about a work, well, yeah. So Kim's talking about a workout. We can just say Fran. For those who do or don't know, Fran is 21, 15, 9 of thrusters and pull-ups. So if we're going with high intensity, right? 21, 15, 9 seems like a random rep scheme. Do you have the most workout, or excuse me, most energy at the start of a workout or at the end of a workout? Start, right? So, well, then let's do most of the work at the start. So this is actually 45 reps, right? So let's do almost half the work at the start. And then as you get more tired, we are going to reduce the reps, but keep the relative intensity the same, right? From there. If we were to do 15, 15, 15, right? That's the same. So where's the high intensity? Where can we be the most intense in this 15, 15, 15? Maybe, right? But then how do we know, right? We can measure it, each one. But when are we doing them out of these, in each set, when are we doing the most amount of work? And of the 15s. It's the same, right? So the work remains constant across all 3 sets. So we would then assume we can move the fastest in the first set, right? But not necessarily. And then the weight would stay the same. So in this case, we're doing the most amount of work, ideally the fastest when we're the best, and then ideally that time stays the same and goes from there, right? So the 21, 15, 9, it could be doubled, right? So then we get back into the variance piece. If we only ever do 21, 15, 9, well, what happens when we have to do 9, 15, and 21? Right? Yeah, we die. Right. So that becomes the variance piece of it, is always doing the 21, 15, 9 until we do something different. Yes, Xavier. Yeah, so in this case, then looking back on the functional movements of, they're both compound movements. They're both a quarter extremity, but in this case, the thruster is a squat and push, and then the pull-up is a pulling motion. And we could use our hips to kip and pull, kip and pull. So hip and push, hip and pull, they're complementing movements. So you're moving different. So ironically enough, by pressing a bunch, you're actually priming your muscles to pull. You can pull more because you've just done a bunch of pressing and vice versa, right? You can do redundant movements of like thrusters and push-ups. It's 2 pushes, and we would challenge the muscles the same way, redundancy. And that's why you might fatigue a lot different in those things. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, like, because there was one that I was doing where you're rowing, bar muscle ups, right?
Mhm.
So, skip version or whatever, but I found rowing, muscle ups, because I just did the muscle up, that, skip version.
Sure.
But the, rowing. Yeah.
Right. Right. So we can use, right? So we can say, I suck at rowing. Or we can be a lot more scientific and be like, okay, what do I need to potentially do more of? Right? Or maybe it's just how those 2 things come together. Yes.
How would you go about scheduling and cost class?
Like me personally, or? Yeah, so I don't make the workouts. We get them from CrossFit. And this goes into a deeper when someone does their CrossFit level 1. Oh, it's a great question, right? But when you do your CrossFit level 1 seminar, this is the stuff you learn. There's a whole lecture on programming. Basically, short answer is we live in couplets and triplets. So this is a couplet, right? So 2 movements, right? Well, if this is Monday, right? Well, so we did a weightlifting and a gymnastics movement. Well, now we will do 1, 2, 3 movements. One might be a monostructural, one might be a body weight gymnastics, and one might be a lighter weight weightlifting, right? Then we offset that with a heavy day, 1 movement, right? And then vice versa from there. Or we could replace that with a 5K run. Just it's 2 movements, 3 movements, 1 movement, 5 movements, 1 movement, 3, 2, 1, like so. Yes.
So wait, how many in these weeks? Wait, how many? So the one program, will, I always use.
Nope.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it'll go 2 programs from. It still varies.
That's right. You will see patterns in a month, but not overall over the course of a year. I know you guys used to do like heavy days on Mondays, right? Like there was a time there, right? Right. So exactly. And it could be, and that's where like I don't, and just like if someone was to create their own workout routine, they will by default lend towards some sort of bias. I will more often than not program something I like to do, right? So same idea as if I were to create, and like, so if someone creates the program for their own gym, some people are really good at it, but others are saying, okay, like, yeah, we're going to weightlift every Monday. We're going to do long, slow stuff on Thursdays, and we're going to do the stuff in between. It's not that that's not a fine way to do the task, but now you're starting to see, okay, we fall into these things. So we get our program right from CrossFit, they determine it, and then we just execute it. Yeah. Yes, Trevor. Just more or less figuring out what are we trying to challenge from there, right? Like figuring out like what do if someone's creating a workout, what do they or how do they want to see it executed? And then what would be an appropriate weight for that? A lot of data goes into it as well, right? And then working backwards from there. Not really, no. And so like that's the cool thing about the CrossFit Open. It's one of the largest participatory sports or events in the world, meaning there's about anywhere between 200 to 400,000 people all doing the exact same workouts. And CrossFit, that's where the $20 goes to, because then all that data gets compiled. And there are places out there that take all the scores and figure out where the different percentiles are. The 90th percentile is here, the 80th percentile is here, the 70th is here, 60th is here. You can see the groupings of it, right? Where the average is based on the scores and then things like that. And then what they'll do is, right? So Fran, 21:59 thrusters and pull-ups. This workout is 20 years old. The cool thing about CrossFit is this used to take people 5-6 minutes. And I know that's still some people's dreams, but now the CrossFit Games people can do this in 2 minutes. Right? They do it in 2 minutes. So it just shows kind of to your question is like, we can do this. We can make this the task. And it can be really, really hard for everyone. Look at it a different way, follow the bouncing ball. The 5-minute mile was impossible until someone ran a 5-minute mile. Right? And then what happened to that? 4-minute mile. Right? 4-minute mile was deemed physiologically impossible. Your body cannot do that until someone did it. And then I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like once someone did it once, it was like within the next month, 20 more people did it. Right? So there's less specifics into like what the RX is and everything. It's just, okay, I did this workout in 13 minutes. this person who, based on all of our workouts put together, is very similar to me, they did it in 10 minutes. That's impossible. There's no way it can be done in 10 minutes, right? Until I see someone do it. Well, guess what now? I go do it, knowing what I know about intensity, knowing I know this workout sucks, but I know it's going to suck, but I also know it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay after. I'm going to get after it. And then I do it in 9.5 minutes. Well, he sees that and he does it in 9 minutes. And then we go back and forth, right? And that's why we do this stuff in a group. Not to compete with each other, but to know, okay, I need to just get out of my feelings for a little bit and get after it and get it done and push a little harder than I want to, perhaps. And be like, wow, I can do that, right? So less in the specifics, but more in the general concepts. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Cool. Yes, Amber.
Have you seen this change?
Try to answer, how do I answer this nicely versus throwing the net? What is a CrossFit movement?
That's, I guess.
A function, yeah.
Yeah.
A functional movement. No. So to Amber's question, it is a great question. No, generally speaking, and I'll answer this in 2 ways. No, because that's why a functional movement, when we have its descriptors, but also movements that express power, they've pretty much stayed the same. Deadlift is a deadlift, squat is a squat. That's why we do functional movements in CrossFit, not CrossFit movements. That being said, handstand walking. Handstand walking came out in the CrossFit Games in like 2012, 2013, and it was just, can I walk in a straight line? If you go on the CrossFit Games Instagram page, you will see they now handstand walk race, literally race, path, up a ramp, downstairs, on parallettes, up and around, turn around and come back. So functional movements don't change, but as we improve our balance, accuracy, and agility and coordination of the handstand walk, and someone's stamina and being able to walk on their hands increases, then we change what we deemed were the limits. Right? Functional movements don't change, but our perception of what our limitations always changes. Isn't that? Huh?
It's kind of like 100 monkeys.
What's that?
So they were pretty far apart, and there were monkeys on one island. And the scientists went there and taught these monkeys how to wash their sweet potatoes before they eat them. And then they went back to other islands a year later, and they found that monkeys over there were, but they were not trained, and there was no way that they could, travel from there to that, and all the islands, all the Senate, all the monkeys were washing their sweet potatoes. So it's like your story about, one person stranded the 100. It's evolution.
Right.
But there's also probably clue about that. At least there were, right? But it could be a little clue, right? But
Right.
or it's just
Hell yeah.
And that's kind of how
Well, yeah, exactly, right? A little bit of luck and a little bit of good planning. And CrossFit, little juju in there. This is now just completely off topic, but to that point, right? CrossFit started as just a guy in a gym. Greg Glassman, Nicole Carroll, the Nasty Girls, Annie Sakamoto in one gym. And then he started publishing his stuff. Greg Glassman, so it's in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is part of Silicon Valley. There's a lot of tech billionaires. Greg Glassman used to do personal training for tech billionaires. They would pay him to sit in their garage and wait for them to be ready to be trained. And he'd be like, okay, well, my hourly rate's $150 an hour. Like, okay, that's fine. Just sit and wait. And he would say he'd be sitting on a case of water bottles in someone's garage. So he started writing this stuff out. It's the CrossFit Journal. So a lot of this stuff we think is new is from the early 2000s, right? CrossFit Journal. Then he started, someone's like, oh, this CrossFit stuff, you put it on a website, CrossFit.com. Post your scores to the comments. People would comment their scores. So people started finding out about it. And then someone's like, hey, we want to be an affiliate. He's like, what's an affiliate? What does that mean? We want to be a gym that does CrossFit. Okay, $500 a year. Good. Went from 2002 to 2012 from 1 affiliate to 12,000 affiliates. Fastest growing brand ever, faster than Subway. It's the early adopter syndrome, right? Any product life cycle, you have the early adopters, the kind of second wave, and then there's a maturation. We're in the maturation phase, right? Kim will tell you back in the day, right? James, the guy who started this place, was like, I'm gonna go start it in Barrie. Because it was like in this thing, it's like, come see this CrossFit thing, come get pulverized. And you would be like, it was not refined at all. It was come in, we're gonna make you feel as bad about yourself as humanly possible. And then you're laying there being like, okay, I'm coming back for more. And they would go tell 2 friends, and they would go tell 2 friends, and they would go tell 2 friends.
Ridiculous warm-ups, like 40 pull-ups warm-ups.
Yeah.
You'd be bleeding before you started to look.
Yeah.
It was dumb, but it was fun.
But that's how we wash. Yeah, and then so that's how exactly the washing the sweet potatoes. It's from Santa Cruz to all around the world, all just kind of replicating it in that aspect. But the ones who last are the ones who do CrossFit. So hopefully, again, the goal is understanding that CrossFit is a thing. It's a specific thing. You're all each encouraged to, when someone asks you what you do CrossFit, don't say constantly very functional movement performed at high intensity, because you're still going to be a weird person. You say, well, I've been doing it. Why do you keep doing it? It's like, well, this is why. What does it do for you? It improves my fitness. Oh, okay. Well, I like to run. Yeah, but how strong are you? Okay. What if I said, let's go do this, right? And then just understand it's the tools that should help you long term. So thank you for coming. I hope that was insightful and inspiring. And know that, remember, I always say, this stuff exists. It's in, I always tell people, CrossFit is a Bible. CrossFit gyms are churches. Every church is different and free to interpret the Bible however they want. The CrossFit is your faith. It's still important relative to you. And you guys are the one doing the work. CrossFit is a very insightful and powerful program, but you're still the one who has to do the shitty things. So give yourselves the biggest pats on the back. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And I, before I even knew what, as you mentioned, I would drive by it and I would think, oh, maybe it's like some kind of church.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. No, Greg Glassman did a talk at the Divinity School of Harvard about CrossFit and the correlations of those things. Funny thing about that, though, is, again, James, who started